From the heart of Central Florida, you are listening to the most electrifying show in media, A Neighbor's Choice. And I'm your host, your neighbor, David Gornoski, glad to be back for our 5 o'clock appointment here on the Eastern Time. Joining us on FM and AM, you are doing that because you're ready to equip yourself with critical analysis of the news, the headlines, in a way that cuts through the noise and confusion, cuts through the negative feedback loop of blame games, and rolls up our sleeves together to solve solutions. That's what we're here to do on A Neighbor's Choice. Always visit us at aneighborschoice.com for shows that you miss and articles. We have exclusive video interviews, articles, and all kinds of things on there that you can join in and participate and enjoy the content we have on aneighborschoice.com. But, you know, one of the things that I have always tried to get people to understand is so much of the narrative in our society has been designed in a way that always makes us scapegoat and hate freedom. Freedom is always considered to be a taboo, something that is passé, something that is not a thing that is to be trifled with or messed with. That its time is up. Its freedom is oppressive. Freedom is short-sighted. Freedom destroys our small towns. Freedom destroys our families. Freedom destroys equity or equality and all these other terms. That's what we're hearing all the time. Freedom is always the problem. And at the same time, we see that power and power and power is what folks want you to surrender to. They want you to have in media to surrender your reality to more and more power and control, to more and more centralization of power in terms of corporations and bureaucracies and the thought leaders that want to benefit from this centralization process. And so on A Neighbor's Choice, we're going to cut through it. One of the things that you're asked to choose from is the idea that you have to pick a side. Either you're for police or you're for the protesters. Yeah, and that kind of truncated way of making you pick a half-truth is what allows folks to spin real injustices into perpetuation of the status quo of centralization of power. Because everyone who's paying attention knows that those are false choices. That one can be for legitimate peaceful protest of bad policies and also for legitimate police work where real crime and real murderers and rapists and thieves are being restrained from victims. This is a good thing. And you don't have to have this false dialectic where you have to pit those two archetypes against each other and create this kind of false binary of Satan casting out Satan. That's the effect, ultimately, of the narrative, that we're supposed to truncate our minds, abandon paradox, abandon balance, and just look for cheap slogans for power. That's not going to be the thing that gets us out of problems that we have. And so on A Neighbor's Choice, we're going to look into this issue of the issue that we've been talking about for some time, which is that you should never use state power to do things that you yourself would not want to do or carry out against your neighbor yourself. So if you do not want to, force your neighbor yourself into a cage where violence is rampant because they sold raw milk, then don't support a law that allows that policy to be done on your behalf. Do you see how it works? What I'm asking folks to do is to treat others the way they want to be treated, even when millions of people are doing bad things in the voting booth. You go in the voting booth, you do things against your neighbor that is wrong for you to do as an individual. And I don't understand. I would love for someone to give me a good explanation as to how, if it's okay, if it's wrong for you to do as an individual, then it's wrong for you to do that action against your neighbor as a voter. Just because you hire government to do it on your behalf, how does that make it magically okay? You know it's wrong to steal from, a rich neighbor to get them to pay up for a new, playground set in the community. You know you can't go up to them and say, you're giving me your money or else. We know that's wrong. So how does it magically become okay if you go into a voting booth and together with tens of millions of people anonymously, you vote for a policy or a way of life that does that on a mass scale? This is the heart of what makes A Neighbor's Choice unique as a program, is we stick to that frame of analysis of the news and politics, and we go all the way with it. We let that principle of truth guide the way we understand things. So one of the things you'll see right now, another false dialectic. So you have the false dialectic of you're either for protests about criminal injustice in policing, or you are for policing, that's it. They can do no wrong. And that's a false dialectic. Nobody thinks that in real life. Now, people convince themselves that they believe those sides because it's hard to resist the magnetic pull of polarized discourse. People don't like to be out in the middle as a peacemaker. People don't like to be paradoxically nuancing things out. They want to fit in, and they'll say, well, yeah, I can see how you could see it in a more complicated manner, but we're in a really struggle right now. We're in a big struggle right now. We need to pick a side, pick a team, and just go all in. That's how most folks feel because they're scared. They feel like if they think as an individual, they'll be mowed down by the mob. And that's a warranted feeling to have, given history. But if we continue to abandon the protection of the individual for the comfort of the mob, we will get nothing but mob justice written as law. We will get nothing but the desecration of our wealth, our property, our children's futures, our freedom, our privacy, our presumption of innocence. We'll have all of that lost if we're not, because look what the Supreme Court can do. Supreme Court can just issue a law ex nihilo, totally outside of the bounds of their jurisdiction, like they did the other day, deciding what are the standards that have to be forced on people's hiring decisions. Now, what's the false dialectic? That means you hate people who are of gender non-binary. No, that doesn't mean that at all. In fact, it's the opposite. It's the folks that want to use people's identity as a cheap ploy for political power, which is the centralization of political power over people's property and contractual rights and their business rights and their religious affiliation rights. This is an attempt to consolidate and centralize power into the hands of giant, unaccountable, far-off bureaucracies and their big corporation allies. And people cynically use the suffering and plight of those who have been picked on because of being transgendered or have been bullied. They use that to exploit that pain and suffering for a cheap, limited political agenda that doesn't see human beings as human beings, but rather sees them as a means to an end to accumulate power. And another false dialectic that we see, and one that I fight back against because I refuse to accept the choices that were supposed to be offered, is the idea that you're either for big corporations or you're for democratic socialism. It's actually that big corporations are one and the same, allied with what's branded as democratic socialism. Big corporations hate free markets, so they brand their rigged corporatism, not markets, but they brand what they do, which is corporatism, which is an alliance with big government. They brand that to the public as free markets and capitalism. So big corporations, they hate free markets. So they brand what they do in alliance with big government as free markets, as capitalism. And that's how they convince folks to hate their own freedom. There are millions and millions of folks who are tempted by the false lies of big corporate McWoke ideologies on the far left and on the right to hate markets, to hate their own freedom, to feel like markets are an esoteric thing, to feel like freedom is an esoteric ideology, unnatural. And what happens? Like a frisbee, the left runs after what we call free markets like a pet that perpetuates our oppression. So the big corporations say, hey, you know, we're free market, we're capitalism, and they throw that frisbee and everybody says, oh, look, they're going after free markets. And the big corporations say, thank goodness, thank the state. We just sent another generation to attack their own freedom for our indulgences, our state-empowered indulgences. We've just crippled more competitive power, and we've stripped more market forces out of our way because we told the left and the right that we're free markets, and they went and destroyed free markets. We'll continue to unpack this live on A Neighbor's Choice.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It can be devastating. There is a law firm in Tampa Bay that will keep you informed throughout the entire process. That law firm is Catania & Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania & Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims do not even realize that they can claim compensation for their loss until they talk to Catania & Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com, award-winning over 28 years and family first. Catania & Catania, personal injury, auto accident, and motorcycle accident attorneys.
United we stand. That's never been more important than it is today. Now you can show your commitment to our president and the nation with the limited edition Trump 2020 American Eagle Silver Dollars. Show your support with the limited edition American Silver Eagles, specially priced from government.com. Just call 1-800-571-6468. Hold the weight of democracy in your hand with new, perfect, uncirculated condition Silver Eagle coins. These historic coins, signed into law by Reagan, have been America's money since 1986. To secure your new limited edition Trump 2020 American Eagle Silver Dollar coins, call 1-800-571-6468. Call now and we'll give you a free Trump 2020 Patriots Pack, including a Declaration of Independence commemorative and 5 Lincoln cents when you order. Call now to secure your silver dollar coins, plus get your free Trump 2020 Patriots Pack, valued at over $10, free with every order. 1-800-571-6468. That's 1-800-571-6468.
Hey, it's Bubba the Love Sponge. With all the coronavirus stuff going on, you've heard the CDC say wash your hands about 1 zillion times. You know, studies show that the average person touches their face 23 times an hour. Your nose, eyes, and mouth, that's called the T-zone. And the T-zone is the most important area to keep clean. And for over 12 years, there's this product called TheraWorks Protect. It's been used by millions of emergency room patients and medical clinics to support infection prevention. TheraWorks Protect is easy to use, and it's safe to apply several times a day on your hands and around your nose and eyes and mouth, better known again as the T-zone. Just apply a small amount into your hand and rub it in until it dries, and then apply another amount and rub it all over your T-zone. You know, finding hand sanitizer sometimes can be difficult, and now you can order TheraWorks Protect online. Just get it directly from them. Go to TZoneProtect.com and use the Bubba Kicker. When you use the Bubba / you're going to get 20% off and free freight, and you're going to have it in a few days. Again, TZoneProtect.com / Bubba. Start protecting yourself and the ones that you love now.
I'm Neighbor's Choice returns. I'm David Gornoski. Who lit the fire in the minds of men? And why is it that no matter what happens, whenever we feel unjust things are happening, we just feel this gentle pull, like the tides of an ocean maybe, pulling us towards things that undermine our liberty. They undermine our negative liberty, which is the right to be left alone, the right to have our life, to have our property, to have contract rights, to be able to run our businesses, to run our churches, to develop our communities, our co-ops, our nonprofits in a way that we see fit, and allow us to have our right to contract with those we want and to associate with our religious beliefs without fear of being brutalized. These are ideas of negative liberty, and those are always attacked whenever there's a crisis. And the other thing that's always squeezed out is, what we would call virtuous liberty, the idea that you are not a slave to the passions, like an automaton that's just moved around by appetites and desires inflamed by advertising or by, bad role models that are imbued into everything we see in our society. So whether it's personal interior liberty towards virtue or whether it's external liberty, we have a law for everything we try to do. We can't create, new ideas. We're not allowed to create new technologies without regulations stamping it out. We're not allowed to solve diseases without regulations stamping it out. We're not allowed to solve pollution without that being stamped out by regulations. We're not allowed to talk about the truth about nutrition without that being stomped out by regulation. We can't even build a house in a cheap way that goes down in prices over years in terms of the cost of building a house because of the regulations. It's always regulations that are curtailing people's ability to get on with their lives. And at the same time, it's always this weird relationship between the curtailment of our external liberties with the curtailment of our interior liberty by the false song of egoism, consumerism, materialism. And what I hear all the time is that folks on the right and folks on the left keep saying, this is a product of too much freedom. You have too much economic freedom. And I have to say, how in the world did we come to this point in our discourse where we have been convinced that to be economically free means you must be amoral? What in the world? Now, I understand that there are folks in intellectual circles who have for a long time tried to masquerade as champions of liberty, champions of the individual. And what they really were pushing was individualism, the worship of the individual self as some kind of island unto itself. But there is no way that we concede the point that to be for individual liberty means you must be for individualism, right? One can protect individual liberty while also totally rejecting the idea that we are islands unto ourselves, that we are autonomous little islands that just pop up, fully formed little independent selves, that we don't owe it to our family and owe it to those around us that have shaped who we are and our narrative about what we want and what we desire. That kind of truncated, cheap view of the human being, of individualism or egoism or whatever words you want to call it, romanticism, there's no way that that has to be intrinsically linked to economic liberty. In fact, I would suggest that economic liberty is most naturally linked to personal self-restraint, self-discipline, which is the opposite of just egoism. And I would say that it's actually completely compatible, and it's actually the only society that is worth, flourishing is one in which people are able to have voluntary role models that practice self-discipline, that You don't have to chase every desire. You don't have to chase every passion of the heart. You don't have to be a slave to the passions and appetites. That you can self-discipline and empower your life through, curtailment of passions, and at the same time enjoy maximum economic liberty. The right to build businesses without being destroyed. The right to pursue truths about the metabolic theory of cancer that contradicts the state-propagated genetic theory of cancer, which I don't believe is accurate science. I think it's political science. It's politicized science. And folks who are on the right and on the left come and say, oh, no. The problem is just too much economic. They call it liberalism. And I'm not going to fight over people's words. If you want to call it that, you can call it whatever you want. Neoliberalism is another word. Look, if that's what you want to take on, that's fine. But the idea that that's somehow a product of you had too much economic freedom, these are folks that say this. I don't think they've ever started a business. I don't think they've ever worked in a hard job where they had to, work in sanitation, work in a farm with their hands, work in a long hours in a grueling, restaurant and gruesome, difficult jobs that people don't want to do in blue collar settings. A lot of folks who have this romantic notion that economic freedom, the right to run a business, the right to have a church, the right to pursue innovations that disrupt the corporate parasites that run the status quo of our society. Whenever we talk about how freedom can creatively destruct that oppression, creatively destroy it, we're always told, shut up on the left and the right and be content with status quos that strip us of our freedom. And they always tell us, even on the right, that to be for economic freedom means you put families at a lower level. No, it's not. It's actually the most family-friendly frame to have maximum economic liberty and personal self-restraint, critique of egoism. And you cannot have some kind of family-friendly flourishing of small-town America through the force of law. Because Jesus said God desires mercy, not sacrifice. Jesus says that you have to make a free will choice to choose virtue. And that includes the virtue of small-town life and family life and localism and local currency. Those are virtuous things that you have to, if you're going to imitate Jesus, you have to do those things voluntarily through free will, not through the force of law. And that's something that a lot of well-meaning folks on the left and the right miss, is the power of following the way of Jesus, which allows free will to make the leap, to make the choice as a neighbor, to do good, to have self-restraint, to have self-sacrifice, to put family first and small-town values first. That has to be done through freedom, or it won't work at all. We'll be back in a moment, live on A Neighbor's Choice.
You know what time of year it is.
Hurricane conditions in the next 36 hours.
You know what hurricanes can do.
Devastating damage expected.
Well, we want you to know, no matter how bad things get,
Power outages. This is life-threatening.
you can stay up to date with the latest information here. Your home for news, talk, and information. And remember, we'll keep an eye on the tropics. You keep an ear on us.
Got batteries in the flashlight.
The all-new News Talk 1040 WHBO.
Yeah, we got our radio.
Texas is one of almost 24 states where COVID-19 cases are rising, but Governor Greg Abbott is downplaying the numbers.
Only about 10% or even less of Texans who test positive for COVID-19 ever even need to go to the hospital in the first place.
Nevada reporting its single largest daily increase of new cases after the governor announced he'd hold off on easing any more restrictions. A ban on chokeholds is included in President Trump's executive order on police reform. The ban is in almost all situations. The president meeting today with several families whose loved ones died in police custody. An administrative order that was signed today by Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms calls for a comprehensive review of the department, past, present, and future. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam proposing Making Juneteenth, which commemorates the signing of the Emancipation Proclamation, an official state holiday. Stocks rallied today, the Dow closing up more than 500 points. Daria Albinger, ABC News.
Welcome back to A Neighbor's Choice. So I'm talking about what is a ongoing thought that I think we need to keep in mind is the false dialectic of the choices that were offered in media discourse on left and right. And I'm not saying everybody's all the same. No, that's obviously not the case. But that this is the general groupthink tenor that you feel in the atmosphere. You're always given false choices of half-truths, and there's another way to do it, which is to redeem the parts of truth that both false choices have in the kernel of what they're saying, and then to hold them in balance as paradox. That's what Christians do. We don't play dialectical games. We do paradox. We hold wisdom, and wisdom is about balancing things and being able to see things with an orchestral framework, being able to see things like an orchestra. And everybody else wants to say, no, I'm team guitar. And the other group says, no, I'm team violin. It's only violins. Violins are the heroes and guitars are evil. And then another team says, no, it's drums. It's drums. And another one says it's, other string instruments. And the answer is that no, there's a paradox here that balances these different parts of the truth into a holistic picture. And that's what Christians do. That's what Christians are asked to do. And being able to weigh between Pharisees and Zealots and Sadducees and, all the different false options that we have in our culture presented to us as truth. And so one of the things that's often very popular to disparage is economic freedom. I've heard it said that if you are a utilitarian, if that's all you're caring about is efficiency, that means you're for economic freedom. That's not true. Now, is economic freedom the most is it the most utilitarian way in terms of, is it going to provide maximum good for the most amount of people? Yes, that's true. But do you have to be a utilitarian at heart where you're calculating things not based on moral principles? No, you don't. In fact, as I said before, Jesus' message of free will ultimately presumes a free market. How in the world can you have a free will choice if you don't have the right to make the wrong choice? And all a market is a collection of people making choices. Now people say, well, but they're not truly individuals because they're manipulated by propaganda. But at that point, what are you going to do? Once you see the argument that because advertising gets people to buy stuff they shouldn't buy, therefore we need to have coercion come into the game and rig markets. Once you see that principle, what you're doing is you're opening up the opportunity for government violence for all kinds of things, because one man's pursuit of the truth is another man's propaganda, right? And so if you say, well, propaganda is violence because advertising gets us to do things and be addicted to, alcohol, or addicted to consumerism and addicted to Facebook, so therefore we have to regulate them to protect us from ourselves. But every time you cry to government to save you from yourself, government says, well, we're going to create a situation in which the things that you were afraid of, we're actually going to have those guys write the policies about how to protect you from them. We're going to have the fox guard the hen house. And people say, thank you, I won, I succeeded. And things get worse. So that's what we call deep capture, the capture of the regulatory apparatus of the state by the people they're supposed to regulate. And at the same time that that's going on, you still have set the moral precedent that it's ever okay to use force to force people to make better choices. That's not what Jesus does. That's what the way of the world is. That's the way of principalities and powers and high places that we wrestle against. That's what we're supposed to struggle against, that magnetic pull to succumb to power after power. Power versus power, might makes right. And so there's all these justifications for surrendering to more and more oppression. And some folks have said, well, that's the only way we'll protect our families is if we create a rigged regulatory market that's more family friendly. No, the best solution for our families is to get economic liberty and voluntarily, through free will, create role modeling institutions and contagious examples of self-sacrificial virtue. Virtue cannot be forced. It can't be forced from the right. It can't be forced from the left. The only place for force in a civilized society is to restrain the initiation of violence. Because that's what skin in the game looks like. If you saw someone being assaulted and it was in your power to physically stop that assault, that's a good choice that you did. If you physically stop that assault by restraining the person who's attacking the other person, then you have used defensive force. That's not violence, that's defensive force. That's protection against violence, which is illegitimate initiation of violence, of force. To take from people, to steal their stuff, to confine them, to hurt them, to threaten them, and so forth. So we know that that's a legitimate law to have. You can't assault, you can't hurt, can't murder. But we're not content with that because we want the shortcut to heaven that leads to hell. We want the shortcut of coercion to produce heavenly ideals, which only results in hell on earth. So we say, oh, look, there's too much greed. Well, what's the problem? Too much economic freedom. No, that's actually the opposite. And just because folks who have advocated for economic freedom have also advocated a libertine attitude or a self-indulgent egoism that doesn't have a proper account of human nature, doesn't mean, therefore, economic liberty is libertinism. No, it's not. You can have libertinism is actually incompatible with economic liberty, in my opinion, because economic liberty fosters self-responsibility. It fosters family-friendly focus. And where economic liberty abounds, you're having the opportunity to make the free will choice to think for yourself and solve things like cancer and diabetes and Alzheimer's and heart disease and all the big scary illnesses, both chronic and acute, both contagious and not contagious, that bother our families. And what's more family friendly for a society than one in which we can take a lot of these awful, debilitating diseases and send them into the trash can of history? And what's more family friendly for small town America than if we could use economic liberty to create energy, using ocean water, using ordinary water to power our homes and cars, and using energy, nuclear energy that doesn't have any gamma ray radiation, doesn't have any dangerous Fukushima-like conditions that violates some of the established status quo of science possibilities by the official science green energy movement, but nevertheless would empower small town America to be wealthier and more vibrant and creative than ever before. And how much more wealth would people have if you had water power your car, and water power your home, and water power your transportation of your goods and foods and meats and produce? How much more wealthy could everyone be, and how much more freer could everyone be to invest in things like private school or alternative schooling or homeschooling? Things that can instill and pass down the virtues and family-friendly values that we all love. Do you see how economic liberty and love of family and love of culture and love of the small go hand in hand? They don't have to be this false dialectic of tension. And that's all the media on the left and the right tell us oftentimes. They equate economic freedom, economic liberty with consumerism. It's opposite. Consumerism is founded by a cheap, artificial Federal Reserve system that creates money out of thin air and creates cheap credit for everybody, credit that's not based on savings. See, in a market society, in order to borrow money, in order to have credit in a society, there must be savings. This is a family-friendly value. It's the negation of market freedom. It's the negation of the virtue of self-restraint and long-term saving that creates consumerism. It's not markets. It is the rigging of markets in the name of coercive ideas by the state and its crony allies on the left and the right that creates this perverse incentive to abandon the family. It is Social Security which created the situation in which people stopped caring so much about their elderly parents. In the old days, in a market-driven society, families took care of their elderly. Then people say, I want to have something that's better than that. Therefore, I will take a shortcut to heavenly ideals, which is security for the elderly, security for widows, and I will take a shortcut to get there using state coercion and create a Ponzi scheme called Social Security, which is going to be a total bankrupt thing for folks who are kids and young folks now. And what has happened as Social Security has happened, we've had the abandonment of elderly folks, putting them off into the corner. Medicaid comes along. We put them off into the corner. We put them into nursing homes. We put them in there. There's no investment. There's no active participation in the care of the elderly because we took the shortcut to heaven, that is state coercion-based Social Security, state coercion-based medical care of the elderly. We took that shortcut to heaven and we ended up in the hell on earth of families that don't take care of the elderly and families that don't take care of those who are sick. And yet we're told, well, the solution is just we need to take more of your economic freedom. Give me a break. That's so ridiculous. It's so asinine. It's the opposite. There is no marketplace for coercion, because coercion is the opposite of voluntary choice. It's really simple, folks. The media wants to obfuscate it. But if you have freedom, then you can choose good choices and you can choose bad choices. When you have coercion, you have a rigged selection of choices available to you. One cannot opt out of Social Security and Medicare and allow their family to take that extra money and invest it in a way that provides for their elderly and their elderly parents. So you see how coercion or government intervention destroys the free will choice of options available for people to work out their salvation with fear and trembling, to love their neighbor as their self, to tend to their elderly parents, to get them proper medical care, to get them the environment of love that comes not through bureaucratic prescription, but through voluntary, from the bottom up, on the ground, skin in the game, virtue, and self-sacrifice. You're not hearing this discussion in any major media platforms, except a neighbor's choice. We'll continue in just a moment.
A lawsuit is not something that anyone looks forward to. It can be devastating. There is a law firm in Tampa Bay that will keep you informed throughout the entire process. That law firm is Catania & Catania. Personal injury law is defended with full disclosure. There is no guessing game. If it's an auto accident, medical malpractice, nursing home negligence, unsafe working conditions, or motorcycle accidents, the law firm of Catania & Catania will handle the process worry-free from start to finish. Many victims do not even realize that they can claim compensation for their loss until they talk to Catania & Catania. They only represent private individuals and treat every case as if it's going to trial. Putting families first is more than just a slogan. It's their way of practicing law. It's a commitment to you. Remember, they don't get paid if you don't get paid. So go to CataniaCatania.com, award-winning over 28 years and family first. Catania & Catania, personal injury, auto accident, and motorcycle accident attorneys.
Man, how can you afford gas for that big SUV? I pay less for gas than everyone else. I got the free Get Upside Gas app and get up to 25 cents a gallon cash back every time I buy gas.
Hold on. You're getting up to 25 cents off a gallon with the free Get Upside Gas app while I'm paying full price?
You know it. People earned over $1 million last year. You just got to take a picture of your gas receipt and bam, up to 25 cents a gallon cash back.
You don't have to tell me twice. I'm downloading the free Get Upside Gas app now.
Download the free Get Upside app now in the App Store or Google Play to save up to 25 cents a gallon when you buy gas. Use promo code TRUCK for a 20-cent a gallon bonus on your first tank. That's up to 45 cents a gallon on your next tank. Just download the free Get Upside app at the App Store or Google Play and use promo code TRUCK. Save money on gas on every fill-up. Download the free Get Upside app and use promo code TRUCK. That's TRUCK.
Let's face it, these are stressful times. New routines, the constant bombardment of bad news, and trying to keep you and your family safe all the time. It's Frank for Center for Men's Health. During these stressful times, your mood is so critical, and nothing's more important to a guy's mood than testosterone. The single greatest issue for guys with low T is mood. And the single greatest change for men that get low T care is a greatly improved mood. Many are grumpy when they start, and most can't believe how much their mood improves once they get treated. And everything improves once your mood improves. Feel the difference C4MH.com can make in your life. I've been a patient of C4MH.com for a couple of years, and recently I've lost 20 pounds because now I have the energy to work out from home. And that'll put you in a good mood too. C4MH.com's express treatment plan is convenient, affordable, and above all, safe. And with locations all up and down West Florida, there's one near you right now. Find out more. Go to C4MH.com.
So it's true that a lot of folks in history have used economic liberty, personal liberty, as a license to abuse that liberty to be a mean boss, to be a terrible person to their neighbor, to be greedy, to be selfish, to be materialistic, to be self-indulgent for desires rather than practicing voluntary self-restraint. It's true that the deification of the individual has become a problem in history that has decoupled folks from looking at things beyond just their own self, but rather looking to things beyond humanity itself, looking at things that guide us in a trajectory of history to where we should be as a people, as a species, the human family. But at the same time that we acknowledge that, we have to recognize that most of the examples of materialism, of rampant consumerism, of rampant advertising, of what they call atomization. Have you heard that word? Atomization, alienation from your labor. Most of that Most of the destruction of small town America is not a product of economic freedom. It's a product of taking a shortcut to heaven, that is, trying to do some good idea, but you're taking a shortcut, and that shortcut is force. That shortcut is the initiation of government regulation to impose by force a good outcome. And try as we might to play the world that way, it just doesn't work. Because the master of history, Jesus, says that's not going to work anymore. It is finished, he said on the cross. Up until that point, the world had only known one choice, which is the way of coercion, the way of might makes right. But with that statement, it is finished, a new reality has come into history that says, no, actually, force in the initiation of domination to get good things done, it's actually based on silliness. It's not actually the effective way to solve problems. Peter, Jesus' best disciple, wanted Jesus to go with force. He saw the ravages of the elites to small town Israel. He saw what they had done to the poor. He saw what the elites had done to the family. Peter saw what the immoral elites occupying his people had done to little towns, little communities. He saw all that. He saw what it had done to the moral fiber and character of his folks. He saw what it had done to the health care. He saw what it had done to the integrity and the dignity of the people. And he said, Jesus, you got to do this by force. You got to do this by policy. You have to do this by imposition of your will through force. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay. You're the good guy, Jesus. If there's anyone in history who's been a good guy, it's you. So you have the right, in this instance, to take power and implement your good way and your good thoughts for the least of these, for the families, for the small towns in Galilee, to use your power, to use your voice, to impose force to achieve the good outcomes that you have talked about. And Jesus looked at that option and he said, "Get behind me, Satan. Get thee behind me, Satan." There are powerful forces of industry with almost unlimited pocketbooks, billion-dollar corporations, and billion-dollar government bureaucracies, and billion-dollar unelected global organizations, NGOs, and so on, that stand to make a killing by coming in the same voice as Peter did and saying, "Little person, you see the pain, you see the healthcare crisis, you see the policing issue, you see racial injustice, you see poverty, you see pollution. The way you solve it is by taking that problem that you are bothered by, taking it out by force, by power." And there are many folks selling us this message every day in media from all sides. And it's in that moment that we have to have the courage and the wisdom to discern that tantalizing appeal. And like Jesus say, "Get thee behind me, Satan. You don't know the things of God. Get thee behind me, Satan." The word Satan was a title that means accuser. Get thee behind me, accuser. You are accusing me. You're trying to draw me in to desire the solution-making process that has failed us for thousands of years. And if force wasn't good enough for Jesus, it's surely not good enough for us. If Jesus, as perfect as his conduct was, still did not find it legitimate to use the power of politics to achieve virtuous outcomes for families, for small town Galilee, for the poor, for the sick, for the unjustly persecuted. If he looked at all of that terrible suffering and in his perfect conduct still said, I can't even use force in a good way to get the outcome we want, get thee behind me, then I think that you and I should say, we're probably not righteous enough to use that force properly either. And if that's the case, we have to repent of our participation in the initiation of that violence to solve all the problems that politicians and media tell us can only be solved with political power. And we have to repent of it by saying, you know what? I'm not going to condemn you people who want politics to find solutions. I'm going to withdraw my participation and my mouth in the service of that lie. Because that's a shortcut to heaven that leads to hell. It is safe mediocrity, not risky excellence. And Jesus asks those who want to admire his way to pursue risky excellence, not safe mediocrity. Safe mediocrity is the way of force and coercion. Safe mediocrity is the way of domination to get your way. Risky excellence is risky precisely because it does not use the false solution of force to pad the options of available choices for people. Risky excellence is risky because it allows for free will to make the choice not to take that drug or not to sell that drug. Free will to make the choice not to abuse your body, not to use your economic prosperity in the service of greed. It's that risky excellence that Jesus has unleashed into the world, and that try as we might to stamp it out with safe mediocrity, just like Peter. Great ideas to use force, but it always results in safe mediocrity, which is ultimately destructive to the heart and to society because it creates stagnation, it creates the destruction of the family, it destroys our bodies, it destroys our medicine. Coercion infects everything it touches. But risky excellence is what Jesus calls us to do, which is to use that risky choice of allowing people economic freedom and personal liberty and not creating a law and a regulation to clamp down on every little thing. And in that freedom, we choose love. We choose mercy, not sacrifice. And that's what we have to do in front of us right now. That's how we'll build our families. That's how we'll build our small towns. And that's how we'll heal our bodies and heal the planet. Risky excellence like Jesus. I'm David Gornoski.
Your home for news, talk, and information. 1040 WHBO Pinellas Park. Tampa Bay's all new News Talk 1040.
It's the only way I get news.